Funding for Lawmakers comes from
the University of West Georgia in Carrollton, ensuring a better life for Georgians in the 21st century. More than 100 programs of study prepare students for successful careers in the critical professions of education and nursing, as well as business and the liberal arts. The Georgia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of Georgia's business community, over 4,000 members strong, working with lawmakers for over 90 years to make sure that our state remains a place where companies thrive.
And by supporters of Georgia Public Broadcasting. Thank you.
Coming up on Lawmakers, the Senate votes to overhaul the state's financially troubled indigent defense system. The governor, lieutenant governor, and House Speaker joined forces to change the structure of Georgia's infrastructure agencies. And we'll talk with Tom Crawford of CapitalImpact.com for his thoughts on this week under the Gold Dome. Those stories and more are coming up next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers. Here are your anchors, Nwandi Lawson and David Zelski.
Good evening, everyone. Also on tonight's broadcast, Governor Sonny Perdue's school board governance legislation passes out of committee.
And a move to close a veterans hospital in Milledgeville spurs impassioned speeches in the Senate. But first, our top story tonight, extensive revision of Georgia's indigent defense system. The Public Defender Standards Council currently provides constitutionally guaranteed legal representation to those who can't afford it. The council administers the indigent defense system, which has become financially strapped in recent years. Senate Bill 42, sponsored by Senator Preston Smith, would restructure this council. However, many opponents of the bill spoke out, including Senator Kasim Reed, an attorney himself, who doesn't believe SB 42 is the right bill to be dealing with. We begin with Senator Smith.
At least the captain of the Titanic didn't see the iceberg in front of him. These guys stared down the iceberg. They know what's going to happen if they run out of money, and they've just pushed the throttle full speed ahead to wreck the ship. So Senate Bill 42 allows us to save this system and to allow a less political group of people to organize it and run it in a way that all defendants who are indigent are able to have representation. This group could not be more political, and they have shown time and again a willingness to drive a political agenda.
If you got $1 million, you're probably going home. Remember the other 90% number. If you're charged by a district attorney in 159 counties in the state of Georgia, you got a 90% chance that you are going to lose. Don't we need to make sure that the people who are defending the least of these have somebody who really wants to fight to make sure they had access to fairness and justice?
I have never in my life been as frustrated with a group of people as I am with the Indigent Defense Advisory Board. They are the most irresponsible group of people I've ever seen. They have abrogated their responsibility. They are doing harm to the defendants in the state of Georgia. And I urge you pass this bill and that we can be rid of these people who are bane upon the existence of the people of Georgia.
Now, Senate Bill 42 passed 32-21, along with SB 100, a companion bill to SB 42, which clarifies the retirement system changes for those who work in the restructured agency.
Governor Sonny Perdue, Lieutenant Governor Casey Cagle, and House Speaker Glenn Richardson joined forces today to announce a new structure for Georgia's infrastructure agencies. Although the measure, which is being introduced in both the House and Senate, does not do away with the Georgia Department of Transportation, the power of that agency would be greatly diminished. Lawmakers Valarie Edwards is live at the Capitol with more. Valarie.
Nwandi, it's interesting to note that in today's press conference, the governor said that he will not support either the House or Senate transportation plans until the new State Transportation Authority is established. Funding for the new State Transportation Authority will come from the state's motor fuel tax, along with any additional monies usually directed to the DOT. Now, the governor started today by emphasizing the imperative of attracting new business to Georgia, and the imperative of getting a return on the millions already invested in transportation.
And what's most frustrating, citizens, individuals, including the citizens in the legislature, the legislators, haven't known who to turn to or who to hold accountable for the lack of value in transportation. And it's frankly nearly impossible to determine who's responsible in a context in which no one, not even the legislature, can get basic information on how money is actually being spent. But really, folks, I want to tell you all, I want to hear this. This isn't about bad people. It is about a process that failed to deliver value for citizens of Georgia. I've bragged on the board. I think they're some of the best citizens of Georgia. But it is a process not of accountability, but it's a process that leads to no value or little value. And frankly, it's that we want to change.
The existing state and road tollway authority, as well as the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority, will be merged into the new state transportation authority. The board of the new agency will consist of 11 members, 5 appointed by the governor and 3 each by the lieutenant governor and the Speaker of the House. Governor Perdue was vague on the future of the current DOT chair, Gina Evans. The governor, however, did credit Evans for substantially reducing the number of outstanding road improvement projects. Under the new agency, the revamped state DOT will have to compete alongside private companies for new highway construction projects. The DOT, however, will remain responsible for inspection and maintenance of road projects. And we've just learned that the House Transportation Committee has unanimously approved legislation creating the Transportation Trust Fund Oversight Committee, a long-range planning strategy funded by a proposed 1% sales tax. Reporting live, I'm Valarie Edwards for Lawmakers.
Okay, thanks for that report, Valerie. Well, Senate Democrats continued their push to improve veteran needs across the state today with 3 points of personal privilege about a proposed closing of the Veterans Hospital in Milledgeville. However, this time, a couple of Republicans took the well to say that veteran needs shouldn't be a partisan issue. Democratic Senator Lester Jackson begins with a letter he received from a concerned citizen.
Please, Senator Jackson, do all you can to keep the doors of the Milledgeville Veterans Hospital open. My father comrades need that much of you. Sincerely, Sandra Kurtz, daughter of a veteran. It is not a partisan issue. It has not been a partisan issue. And the more we inject partisanship into taking care of our veterans and our military, the less it becomes likely that we'll be able to do anything together in the future.
Let's go stand with our veterans jointly. Let's stand for those that have served. Let's stand for those families that have members that have died. Let's stand for those who have loved ones there in harm's way today or on stateside. And let's stand together, united as one, as opposed to divided.
I hadn't heard anybody say Republicans or Democrats except the last 2 speakers. We've been talking about veterans.
The Senate Education and Youth Committee today recommended passage of Governor Perdue's initiative to allow the state to remove school board members in cases like Clayton County when the accreditation of the system is at risk. Supporters say the substitute bill passed today addresses the protections for school boards and the communities that they serve.
Any sanction would have to be found by a 2/3 vote of the board rather than a simple majority vote. And B, any board member who is removed under this code section will have the right of appeal to the State Board of Education and will retain all of their voting rights and all other rights of a board member until such time as the State Board upholds that removal. And so we felt that would go a long way towards addressing a lot of the concerns about, maybe some board somewhere would gang up on one member illegitimately.
The business community continues to champion the measure. Gary Price of PricewaterhouseCoopers says it places education governance on par with business governance.
If this passes, this actually would make Georgia leapfrog most states in terms of school board governance and really put us in front and as a leader and a model for other states to follow.
SB 84 was given a due pass with several amendments and now moves to Senate rules.
Governor Perdue's first of 2 tort reform bills that aim to spur economic growth in Georgia had a public hearing today in the Senate Economic Development Committee. SB 101, sponsored by the governor's Senate floor leader Bill Cagle, would bar citizens from bringing a products liability claim against any pharmaceutical corporation that is Georgia-based or has 200 or more employees in Georgia. Senator Cagle opened today's hearing.
We've got an opportunity in Georgia to develop this industry. It gives us high-paying jobs, they're clean jobs, environmentally friendly jobs, and give us an advantage over other states trying to develop this type of industry. All we're doing in this bill is saying that if you are a maker of medical devices, drugs, other medical products that have obtained that very thorough FDA pre-market approval, and you obtained that approval in good faith, you did nothing to defraud the FDA, to conceal evidence or test results. But if you followed their protocols, did the clinical trials required by the FDA, and your product is approved for marketing, then you're immune from being sued for making a defective product.
After testimony from Senator Cagle, speakers from both sides of the issue commented on the legislation. Andy Childers of the Georgia Trial Lawyers Association was among those who share concerns about the FDA being the final say when it comes to testing pharmaceutical products.
The FDA has no subpoena power. The FDA cannot require a drug company to give them any information. And because of that, the FDA, former commissioners, and the New England Journal have said to the Supreme Court of the United States that often the only way the FDA learns about a side effect is through litigation, because when they are sued in a court of law, they can be compelled to produce this information that the FDA itself cannot compel them to produce.
Now, no date was set for the committee vote on SB 101, and just a note, Michigan is the only other state with this kind of biomedical company immunity.
The House today voted to allow parents to send their children to any public school in their districts, provided there's adequate space at that school. Representative Tommy Benton asked the bill sponsor, Representative Alicia Thomas Morgan, whether HB 251 would strip school boards of power and what would happen if schools become overcrowded.
If a school is at capacity and then there are 2 or 3 move-ins, what happens now is that school would have to apply for a waiver to be able to receive those students and make sure they meet the classroom requirements. And so the same would happen with this bill.
2 more questions. Will you yield?
Sure.
Is there any chance that this bill might be used by some districts to bring about more de facto segregation?
Well, I certainly can't speak for school systems, but this is not the intent of the bill.
Okay. And the last thing, is there any chance that your bill, if it passes today and it gets over to the other house, might be used as a vehicle for school vouchers?
Absolutely not.
You would oppose that in all form or fashion?
I will.
On your bill?
Yes.
House Bill 251 passed 139 to 23 and moves over to the Senate. In other House news, Representative David Lucas used a morning order today to drum up support for the restoration of sales tax on food. He said this money would go a long way towards addressing the state's budget issues.
We got to have some money. The stimulus package is coming down, but the stimulus package will not solve all our issues. I would ask all of us, as we look, we've got to do something. I've introduced House Bill 401, which repeals the sales tax exemption on food. It will bring us $1 billion+ so that we don't have to lay off teachers.
Representative Chuck Sims also sponsors a temporary return of the food sales tax. HB 67, along with Lucas's HB 401, is currently in the House Ways and Means Committee.
And over in the Senate, Senator Horacina Tate took the well this morning on a point of personal privilege to share her thoughts on the fate of federal stimulus monies headed to Georgia with a focus on higher education.
We are hopeful that a portion of the stimulus package can be used for maintenance, repairs, and renovations, that the system has a great and a large substantial list of projects that will make buildings more energy efficient. The University System of Georgia appears to understand the need to be as efficient as possible in the current budget climate. Their focus should always remain on the students, since we are relying on them to produce Georgia's next generation of leaders, farmers, teachers, doctors, nurses, and business professionals, all of whom will serve this state as contributing members of society.
And now more on the Salmonella outbreak story that we've been following. Yesterday, the Senate passed Senate Bill 80, which would give the Georgia Department of Agriculture more investigative powers. Earlier this week, GPB Radio's John Sepulveda visited Blakely, Georgia, and sent us the profile of the Peanut Corporation of America plant at the center of the outbreak.
Former PCA employees say the Blakely facility was filthy. Grease covered the floors, and when it rained, water fell through the roof. 55-gallon drums like these were used to collect that rainwater, according to employees. Meanwhile, they say plant managers put up decoy owls to scare off birds that kept flying into the facility through the large holes in the roof.
And according to former plant janitor Ann Bristow, the roof in that facility was never fixed, and the owls did not keep the birds out.
The owls didn't do no good in keeping the birds out. If I see a bird in the building, I go and tell Raymond, there's a bird in the warehouse, because they normally be in the warehouse in the box room. He would get his little pellet gun and go out, and he'll shoot.
Bristow, like several other PCA employees, did not want their image on tape. As for the company, they have not returned repeated requests for comment. Perhaps most damning, though, are not the allegations of an unsanitary plant, but these documents obtained from the Food and Drug Administration. They suggest plant managers knowingly shipped salmonella-tainted product. And while that in itself is a crime, companies like PCA that find salmonella through self-testing do not have to report it to officials. SB 80 by Senator John Bullock would change that.
You've got to be sure that you're shipping a safe product. Now, the reporting part, it's my understanding that no other state requires them on any confirmed positive test that they have to report that to the department.
Food safety experts have described this as one of the toughest proposals in the country. And back in Blakely, the bill has been well received. Morale has been low since the head of PCA refused to testify in front of Congress, and memos were made public suggesting PCA was more concerned about money than public health.
One of the things that was most disturbing to me, almost to the point of unbelief, was some of the emails that I guess came out as a result of the FBI investigation into the plant itself.
I spoke at length with Blakely Mayor Rick Hall. He says he believes this legislation will help restore confidence in Blakely's agricultural sector.
Yet, experts say with just under 1,000 food inspectors nationwide and over 30,000 food manufacturers, ultimately, food safety is left up to companies like Peanut Corporation of America. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm John Sepulveda in Blakely, Georgia.
Again, SB 80 passed the Senate yesterday and now moves to the House.
Well, yesterday, the Senate Regulated Industries Committee heard from both sides on legislation that would allow counties and municipalities the decision of whether to sell alcohol on Sundays. Senator Seth Harp led the discussion about Senate Bill 16 that's scheduled for a vote next week.
It is not a bill that authorizes the sale of alcohol on Sunday. And that is the misconception that has been stated time and time again by those folks that are opponents to this bill. What this bill does is allows each community, by the process of their elected officials, to call for a referendum, and the referendum would then in turn make a decision, yes or no, on whether or not they allowed for the sale of alcohol.
I see this as a further encroachment on the Lord's Day, the day that is a day of worship. Beer and wine sales are an important component in the sales mix for many Georgia retailers, and in some stores may represent as much as 20% of total sales in certain markets.
And now we have the results of our online poll for you. When asked, how would you have voted on legislation that would have capped property tax assessments, 65% said yes, cap assessments at the lesser of 3% of the rate of inflation, while 35% of respondents said no. Be sure and visit gpb.org/lawmakers to vote in the next legislative issue poll.
It's the end of the 5th legislative week under the Gold Dome, the perfect time to check in with Tom Crawford, national editor of CapitolImpact.com. I had the chance to sit down with Tom earlier and began by asking him about the impact of the federal stimulus funds headed to Georgia.
Well, it's been holding up the session, as you know, in Wandy because they split the end of the session into late June just to make sure that there were people here to officially accept money if it ever came in from the federal government. But we know now that the bill has been signed by President Obama and the money is actually coming to Georgia. And in fact, one of the first things Governor Perdue did is accept $465 million, I believe, to help out Medicaid, which is badly needed and will help a lot of people there. And in turn, he was able to use $428 million to continue, at least for another year, the homeowners tax relief grant, which is worth $200, $300 a year to most Georgia homeowners. That, for the moment, is the only stimulus money that the governor has specifically said he's going to use. He indicated most of the rest of it would be considered as part of the budget for the fiscal year that starts on July 1. But that was a big step, and it really will help the state. And it'll help legislators, too, because they're dealing with some very, very severe budget shortfalls.
Then yesterday, a number of bills being introduced in the House encouraging economic stimulus here at the state level.
That's correct. Governor Perdue and a lot of the House and Senate leadership introduced two bills which are basically a package of various tax breaks. The thinking is that additional corporate tax breaks will inspire or motivate businesses to create more jobs. One of the major things they're proposing is to do away with the corporate income tax entirely over a 12-year period, I think. Yes. Now, that's a lot of money. Who knows if that will actually come to be, but that's a rather significant change in the state tax laws as well. So I guess it's fair to ask, do they really need to do that since we've got so much money coming in from the federal government? But I think the state folks wanted to see what they could at their level do about the economic recession.
And of course, the governor looking to what the federal money means for transportation here in the state, making some big announcements today about the Department of Transportation.
They are introducing a bill this week to radically revamp the way the state's transportation needs are administered. What they're talking about would really de-emphasize the role of the State Department of Transportation and create a new state transportation authority that would assume a lot of the administrative responsibilities for building roads and transit systems and such as that. I think the one big question yet to be answered is how are we going to raise money to pay for new roads and such, because we're $7 or $8 billion short over the next 10 years. And until they can figure out where the money's going to come from, the rest of the stuff they're doing really won't matter that much. So that's the big decision that has yet to be made at the state level.
Well, we will wait and see, as we say every single week. Tom Crawford from CapitolImpact.com. We always appreciate your insights.
Great to be here.
And Senator Renee Unterman had little trouble passing her bill to expand the definition of sexual exploitation through the Senate Judiciary Committee this afternoon. Senator Unterman drafted SB 69 as a result of the Joint House and Senate Commission on Sexual Exploitation of Minors.
Currently in the code section, it is listed as a child's parent or caretaker. And what we would like to do with this code section is to expand it to include any person.
Many of the 200 to 300 children that are being commercially sexually exploited in this state each month are not being identified. So that is what this bill is coming forward to help identify more of these sexual exploitation victims.
I don't know why sexual exploitation was limited to the parent or caretaker, but I think this is a good bill. We certainly support the bill.
And SB 69 received a due pass with no opposition and now moves to the House.
The 5th annual Children's Policy Watch at the Capitol took place this morning, featuring a keynote by Congressman Sanford Bishop, who discussed how the state can use funds from the federal economic stimulus package to help Georgia's children. Lawmakers Alan Friedman has the rest of the story.
Voices for Georgia's Children, an Atlanta-based child advocacy group, focused today's annual meeting with legislators on the value of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. Congressman Sanford Bishop explained how he sees Georgians benefiting from the federal stimulus.
Economic stimulus makes a huge step toward providing that shot in the arm for our educational system, from secondary education to higher education. At the secondary level, the bill provides $10.3 billion to local school districts through the Title I program for disadvantaged students. That is huge.
Bishop also discussed the reauthorization of the State Children's Health Insurance Program, or SCHIP.
The bill will give states the resources and incentives necessary to reach and cover millions of uninsured children who are currently eligible for but not enrolled in the Peach Care, and of course, nationwide, the SCHIP program in Medicaid.
Congressman Bishop, as well as other speakers at today's press conference, spoke of the importance of using the stimulus money to invest in Georgia's children. The Voices organization hopes that other lawmakers will follow their lead. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Alan Friedman.
It's the right thing to do, prosecution-based victim advocates said today about their work and two pieces of legislation that would expand the victim impact statement, the time when victims can address the court prior to sentencing. Lawmakers' Emily Banks has more.
Members of the Prosecuting Attorneys Council of Georgia came to the Capitol today for Prosecution-Based Victim Advocacy Day. Kelly Wiggins spoke about her experiences with the Victim Witness Assistance Program after her sister was murdered in 2004, and how Senate Bills 151 and 13 could help people like her if they become law.
My parents, specifically in my case, could not take the stand and deliver an impact statement. They were so angered and grieved and emotional, they could not do that. And so what this bill will do will help families and people who want to make a statement but can't. And we should not have to seek the death penalty in order to get life without parole. And Senate Bill 13 would give the opportunity to do that.
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Emily Banks.
And those who are preparing to join the workforce brought their concerns about the economy to the Capitol steps today. Lawmakers' Brittany Evans has that story.
The Metro Atlanta Students for Sustainability have an answer for a legislature trying to bring jobs to Georgia. Make them green. Daniel Spiller, a senior at Emory University, explained.
We need green jobs. Georgia legislators put us to work. Allow us to bring Georgia's energy grid into the 21st century.
The students came out in support of two measures in particular that aid their cause. House Bill 276, which would prohibit mountaintop removal coal mining, and Senate Bill 147, which would increase the proportion of renewable energy in the state.
The students took their fight from the steps of the Capitol indoors, where they invited legislators to discuss the issues over lunch.
One sponsor of HB 276, Representative Brian Thomas, spoke to several of the students.
It's really encouraging to see people looking at issues, understanding them, and wanting to come out and let people know where they really stand on them.
No more coal! No more coal!
Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm Brittany Evans.
And just as a reminder, the Georgia General Assembly has adopted a 3-day-a-week schedule for the next 6 weeks. We will continue to bring you all the latest Capitol news on those legislative days because the General Assembly is in recess tomorrow and Monday. Lawmakers returns on Tuesday, February 17th at 7 p.m. And if you have missed any part of this Lawmakers broadcast, tune in tomorrow morning when Lawmakers repeats at 5:30 a.m. here on GPB television. You can also see this episode of Lawmakers at 7 a.m. on GPB Knowledge. GPB Knowledge is available to those with digital television receivers at 0.3 of your local GPB transmitter. For example, 20.3 in Augusta or 8.3 in Atlanta. You can also keep up with all of the action under the Gold Dome daily on your local GPB radio station during Morning Edition, All Things Considered, and Georgia Gazette. Well, coming up on GPB television, This Old House. That's next here on GPB.
And that's the end of our broadcast for this, the 21st legislative day of the 2009 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Wandy Lawson.
And I'm David Zelski. Join us Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the next Lawmakers. Have a great weekend.
Good night.
This has been a production of Georgia Public Broadcasting.